Caught between hope and uncertainty, Clara wonders, could their connection be something more, or is it all in her head? In this heartwarming love story filled with unexpected moments and quiet yearning, Clara must decide if she's ready to take the first step toward what could be the love of a lifetime, or risk letting it slip away. Title: I Don't Know If He Likes Me. Chapter 1, A chance encounter. The hospital buzzed with the kind of urgency that only a Monday morning could bring. Clara gripped the small map of the building in her hand, her breath hitching with each hurried step. It was her first day as a nurse, and nothing had gone as planned. The sprawling corridors stretched endlessly before her, each turn looking more unfamiliar than the last. She glanced at the map again, her fingers trembling slightly. Gynecology. Second floor, she muttered under her breath, her voice edged with frustration. Yet somehow, every hallway she turned into seemed to take her further from where she needed to be. Just as her nerves threatened to unravel completely, she noticed a figure standing at the far end of the corridor. He leaned casually against the wall, scrolling through his phone. The sight of another human, someone who might be able to help, was like a lifeline. Clara hurried toward him. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but desperate enough to make him look up. The man's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Clara forgot how to speak. He was tall, with dark hair that looked like it had been tousled by the wind, and eyes the color of a clear summer sky. His white coat hung loosely over his scrubs, and he had an easy air about him, like someone who had seen his fair share of chaos but wasn't fazed by it anymore. "Yes?" he asked, his lips curving into a friendly smile. "I'm sorry to bother you," Clara said, clutching the map to her chest. "I'm new here, and I'm supposed to be in the gynecology department, but I can't seem to find it." His smile widened, softening the sharp angles of his face. "You're close, but not quite there. It's easy to get lost here on your first day." "Could you point me in the right direction?" she asked, hopeful. Instead of answering, he slid his phone into his pocket and nodded toward the corridor. "I'll take you there." Clara blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, you don't have to, it's no trouble," he interrupted gently, already walking ahead of her. She followed him, her heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with her nerves. His stride was confident, his presence calm and reassuring. For the first time all morning, Clara felt a flicker of relief. "You're new here?" he asked over his shoulder. "Yes, just started today," she replied, quickening her pace to keep up with him. "Well, welcome to the madness," he said, a teasing glint in his eyes as he glanced back at her. Before she knew it, they reached the double doors of the gynecology department. He stopped and turned to face her, his hands tucked into his coat pockets. "Here you are," he said, his voice warm. "Thank you so much," Clara said, relief flooding her. "I don't even know your name." "Ethan," he said simply. "And you are?" "Clara." "Well, Clara, good luck on your first day." He nodded and turned, heading down the corridor. She stood there for a moment, watching him go. There was something about the way he moved, confident but unhurried, that lingered in her mind as she pushed through the doors. Inside, the day passed in a blur of introductions and tasks. Clara tried to focus, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan. She hadn't seen him again, but his easy smile and kind eyes stayed with her. It wasn't until later, as she grabbed a cup of coffee from the break room, that she overheard two nurses talking in hushed voices. "Dr. Ethan?" "The gynecologist," one of them said. Clara's hand froze midair, her coffee forgotten. "Dr. Ethan?" Could it be the same Ethan she'd met that morning?
"Yeah,"
the other nurse replied. "He's one of the youngest specialists here, but he's brilliant. Too bad he's always so focused on work." Clara's stomach flipped, a mix of embarrassment and something she couldn't quite name. He wasn't just any doctor. He was the doctor for the department she was now part of. Her thoughts raced, and for the rest of the day, she couldn't help but wonder, was he just being polite earlier? Or had there been something more to his kindness? But before she could dwell too long, fate decided to intervene. As Clara left the hospital at the end of her shift, exhausted but still buzzing from her first day, she spotted a familiar figure in the parking lot. Ethan stood by his car, leaning against the door with a contemplative look on his face. He saw her before she could turn away, his lips curving into that same disarming smile. Clara, he said, as if her name was a question he hadn't expected to answer. And just like that, her heart raced all over again. Chapter 2, A Ride in the Rain. The garage was dimly lit, with the sound of raindrops echoing off the concrete walls. Clara hesitated as she saw Ethan standing by his car, casually scrolling through his phone. She considered sneaking past unnoticed, but as if sensing her presence, he glanced up and smiled. Clara, he greeted, his voice warm and familiar. Hi, Ethan, she said, her cheeks flushing slightly. He straightened and slipped his phone into his pocket. How was your first day? Survived the madness? She shrugged with a small laugh. It was good. I'm still getting used to things. I didn't do much today, mostly listening, observing, and trying to get familiar with the equipment. What about you? Mine was positive, he replied, leaning casually against the car door. Busy, but productive. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Where did you park? Oh, Clara said, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. I didn't bring a car. I actually came with my bike. She pointed toward a small bicycle propped near the wall, its bright blue frame slightly out of place in the gloomy garage. Ethan's eyebrows lifted. A bike? That one? She nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious.
Yeah.
It's just a small one. Gets the job done. He glanced toward the garage entrance, where the rain was pouring steadily. It's raining, he said, his voice laced with concern. How are you planning to get home? Clara glanced at the downpour, then back at Ethan. I'll wait for it to stop. It shouldn't last too long, I hope. He frowned slightly. Is your bike a folding one? She blinked at the unexpected question. Yes, it is, but, perfect, he interrupted with a nod. I don't mind giving you a lift. Her eyes widened. Oh, no, I couldn't ask you to do that. It's too much trouble. It's no trouble at all, he said, his tone firm but kind. I'd rather know you got home safely than leave you here waiting for who knows how long. She hesitated, glancing at her bike and then at him. The sincerity in his eyes made it impossible to argue. Well, if you're sure. I'm sure. Ethan opened the trunk of his car, and Clara quickly folded her bike and helped him load it inside. Once everything was secure, they climbed into the car, the warmth of the interior a stark contrast to the cold rain outside. Thanks again, Clara said as she buckled her seatbelt. I really appreciate this. No problem, Ethan replied, starting the engine. So, where am I taking you? She gave him her address, and he nodded. As they pulled out of the garage, the sound of rain pattering against the windshield filled the small space. You know, he began, glancing at her with a smile, you're braver than me. Riding a bike to work in this city? That's impressive. She laughed softly. Brave or stubborn? I haven't decided which yet. It's just more practical for me right now. Practical, sure, but still risky. Do you ride every day? Most days, she admitted. It's cheaper than a car, and honestly, I kind of enjoy it, when it's not raining, anyway. He chuckled. Fair point. Still, I'd say you've earned some serious respect. I'd probably crash in 5 minutes trying to ride through traffic here. They shared a laugh, the tension of the day melting away with each word. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from their favorite ways to unwind after a long shift to Ethan's brief but disastrous attempt at learning to cook in medical school. You're telling me you burned rice? Clara asked, her voice tinged with disbelief and amusement. It's possible, Ethan admitted, his grin sheepish. In my defense, I was distracted by studying. But,
Yeah.
my friends never let me forget it. Well, she teased, at least you're better at saving lives than cooking. True, he said, laughing. I've got that going for me. As they neared her apartment, the rain began to let up, the world outside the car awash in the soft glow of streetlights. Clara pointed out her building, and Ethan pulled up to the curb. Here we are, he said, turning to face her. Thank you so much, Ethan, she said, her voice sincere. You really didn't have to do this. I wanted to, he replied simply. I'm glad you let me. Clara opened the door but paused before stepping out. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure if she should say more. Finally, she settled on, see you tomorrow? Ethan smiled, his gaze steady. Definitely. Good night, Clara. Good night. She climbed out, retrieving her bike from the trunk and waving as he drove off. Standing there in the cool night air, watching his taillights disappear down the street, Clara felt a strange mix of emotions, gratitude, curiosity, and something else she couldn't quite name. As she wheeled her bike toward the building, a single thought lingered in her mind. He's so kind. But does he see me as more than just a colleague? It was a question that refused to leave her alone. Chapter 3, Late Night Confessions. Clara pushed open the door to her apartment, the warmth of home wrapping around her like a soft blanket. She wheeled her bike into the small corner by the window and let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Jenny, she called, slipping off her rain-dampened shoes. In the kitchen, her roommate's cheerful voice echoed back. Clara walked in to find Jennifer perched on the counter, eating a bowl of cereal like it was a gourmet meal. Her blonde hair was tied up in a messy bun, and her curious blue eyes lit up the moment she saw Clara. There she is, Jenny said, hopping down. How was the big first day? Clara sighed, dropping into one of the dining chairs. It was eventful. Jenny raised an eyebrow, grabbing another spoonful of cereal. Eventful? Spill. Clara hesitated for a moment before the words came tumbling out. Okay, so I got lost on my way to the department this morning. Jenny smirked. Classic. And this guy helped me find it, Clara continued. Guy? Jenny asked, her tone instantly teasing. Clara rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. Yes, a guy. He was really nice. Turns out, he's one of the gynecologists in my department. His name's Ethan. Jenny's spoon froze midair. Oh no. Oh no. No, no. Clara. Are you about to tell me that on your first day at work, you're already falling in love? Clara let out a laugh, shaking her head. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Jenny exclaimed, setting her cereal aside and leaning in like a detective closing in on a suspect. Your eyes are all starry, and you're smiling like you just found out your crush likes you back. He's just... Clara paused, searching for the right words. He's really good-looking, Jen. Like, distractingly good-looking. And his perfume. She closed her eyes briefly as if reliving the moment. It's so nice. The kind of smell that makes you want to hug someone and never let go. Jenny stared at her for a beat before bursting into laughter. So, let me get this straight. In just a couple of minutes with this guy, you've cataloged his looks, his scent, and his aura? She clapped her hands together dramatically. Why don't you quit nursing and join the police force, Sherlock? Clara couldn't help but laugh too. Stop it, she said, throwing a pillow at her. Jenny caught it with ease, still grinning. Seriously though, be careful. Maybe that's just how he is with everyone, including men. Super kind, super polite, super charming, it might just be his thing. Clara nodded, her smile fading slightly. I know. That's why I don't want to think too deeply about it. It's probably nothing. I mean, he didn't do anything. She waved her hand dismissively. Let's stop talking about me. How was your day? Jenny watched her closely for a moment, as if deciding whether to press further, then shrugged and grabbed her cereal again. Oh, you know, the usual. Crazy clients, late deadlines, and my boss having a meltdown about some presentation tomorrow. I swear, marketing is just one long, dramatic soap opera. Clara laughed, leaning her chin on her hand. Dinner yet? Nope, Jenny replied. But I'm starving. What are we thinking? Pizza? Stir fry? Or are we doing the classic, whatever we can scavenge from the fridge, routine? That's good, Clara said. Oh my gosh, you're still blushing, Jenny teased. Clara laughed, dodging her friend's attempts to ask more questions, but deep down, as the memory of Ethan's voice and that quiet smile replayed in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning to be continued.